Welcome to another episode of the Para Cave podcast. And now over to your host, Troy Warner, broadcasting live from the world-famous Para Cave.
And yes, hello and welcome back to another episode of the Para Cave podcast. And I thought I would jump on the podcast and just do a little bit of a, I guess you could say, a Vegas wrap-up, Las Vegas wrap-up, round zero as like some people like to call it. But it is the opening weekend of round number 1 in the NRL. But it is also something that I am thinking of doing throughout the NRL season, once a week or maybe once a fortnight as well, or depending on how I go. And that is a NRL sort of podcast about a round review and any rugby league news that comes in and things like that. So hoping to get a few other content creators on board with that. So as I said, maybe once a week, maybe once a fortnight. I'll see how I go, how I'm going for time and the like. But yeah, I just love talking rugby league, so why not? But anyway, this one is the Las Vegas edition. And of course, we saw the 4 games played over there: the Raiders, Warriors, the Panthers, Sharks in the NRL, the Jillaroos taking on the English women's side, and also Wigan and Warrington in the Super League. The Super League sides ventured over to Vegas as well this season. So 4 games, they doubled the amount of games that were played. Last season there was only the 2 games over there, the 2 NRL games, Manly and South Sydney, and the Broncos and the Roosters. But they doubled the games played over there. And look, early on, it was looking pretty interesting. We all saw the Canberra Raiders incident there between Morgan Smithies and Hudson Young about the incident in the lift and being out of a hotel room and not having a hotel room and the like. So probably a little bit blown out of proportion. It wasn't anything major. Nobody got hurt. They weren't hurting anybody. So yeah, probably just got a little bit blown out of proportion. And look, the Raiders responded on the weekend by winning the game. So they knuckled down after that. I think that was on after the first night that they were in Vegas, I think. So they got that out of their system nice and early, and I'm sure Ricky trained the team reasonably hard leading up to that game. So yeah, that was early on. Look, from watching it from afar over here in Australia, it was great coverage, particularly on Fox Sports, the daily shows that were on a little bit earlier this year. I didn't watch them live. I watched the replays of those ones, but some of the coverage that was coming out of there was fantastic. Just the crowds, especially at the Fremont Street Fan Day. Now, anyone who's been over there last year did tell me that it was a fantastic day out, the Fan Day, but this year it seemed, and the commentators were talking about it, that it was much bigger and a lot more people turned up to that. And you know, there was rugby league jerseys for as long as the eye could see. So that was something that was great. And look, I'm sure a fantastic time was had by all. Lead-ups to the game, well, look, there was obviously a lot of media commitments, as I just spoke about, the Fan Day that happened. A couple of things that came out of the Fan Day was Brian To'o and Sarah Togatuki doing the breakdancing, doing the dancing, the fancy dancing. How good was that? The crowd was certainly getting behind that. That is for sure. Just raising the game of rugby league and just showing what other skills our rugby league players have. But yeah, that was sensational. That was for sure. Look, the games that were played, as I mentioned, in the NRL particularly, the Raiders took on the Warriors. The Raiders won 30 points to 8 in that one. Look, I did dreadfully in the tipping on the weekend. I'm 0 from 2 so far. I actually did tip the Warriors. I don't know why. A lot of people have tipped the Raiders to come down the bottom of the table this season, but after that performance on the weekend, I am not too sure why. I think they may find themselves positioned a little bit higher than down the bottom of the ladder. 5 tries to 2, Xavier Savage, 2 tries, and one of them was a length of the field intercept. So how good was that to see him in full flight? Joseph Tarpany was sin-binned for a shoulder charge. He will miss this weekend's game for the Raiders. And look, a pretty fair performance. It was 16-4 at half-time. The Warriors never really came back into it, and the Raiders went on with it. So it was a big win to them to kickstart their season. And in the second NRL game that was played, which was the last game of the day, the night in Las Vegas, the day in Australia, it was the Panthers who got the victory, 28 points to 22 over the Cronulla Sharks, 5 tries to 4. Pretty much Nathan Cleary, man of the match performance. It looked early on, though, that the Sharks were going to give the Panthers a little bit of a run for their money. They scored the first try through Jesse Raymond and got off to an early lead. However, 2 quick tries to the Panthers through Isaiah Yeo, which was a great try. He just saw a little bit of an opening up the middle. I think he beat Fanua Blake and Todd Hazelton and scored a try. He took it upon himself to get that and get the Panthers on the board. Isaac Tungo's try was an absolute pinpoint kick from Nathan Cleary. Isaac caught on the full and scored. I dare say that they have been practicing that at training a lot of times, and it was pretty clinical what he did there, and they scored. Dayton Laurie got a double. Paul Alamotti got a try as well. For the Sharks, when Britton Nikora scored his try, you thought possibly that the Sharkies were going to come back into the game. I think it ended up 12-10 at half-time, and you thought, okay, this is still anybody's game, but the Panthers, after half-time, just pretty much blew the Sharks off the park. Adam Fanua-Blake, he scored a try on his club debut in the 68th minute. You thought maybe they could get back and close to the Panthers, but no, it wasn't to be. Notorious sort of slow starters in the start of the season, the Panthers, but not this time. They got the win, 28 points to 22, so they start their campaign for a 5th premiership in a row off to a good start. So look, that was probably the highlight from that game, I guess you could say. Oh, look, I'm going to say Nathan Cleary's kick for Tungo there. That was a great kick there. A lot of talk after the Las Vegas event about whether there should be 4 games played there. We did see earlier on the day before the Panthers and Sharks game, the Gillaroos played the English women's side and absolutely smashed them. It was 90 points to 4. And look, some have got the argument saying, yes, it was a good advertisement for women's rugby league. Others are saying, look, no, it wasn't. We shouldn't see contests won like that, an 86-point margin. But look, it was, I think, 17 tries to 1. Not Taryn Aiken, well, she was probably the player of the match. Absolutely nailed it. Funnily enough, didn't score a try, but did kick 11 from 17, and thank goodness for the English, because if she did convert those other 6 tries, then it would have been over 100. So, but had a starring part in this game. Probably, as I said, player of the match. Tamika Upton scored 5. Jessica Sergis scored 3. Isabel Kelly scored 3 as well. So it was a great performance, that is for sure, for the Australian side. 38-0 at half time, and you thought, wow, this could be anything. No, we did not think it was going to be 90 points to 4. So out of that, even the first game, the Wigan versus Warrington game, I think at one point there it was 42-0. And ended up being, I think, 48-24. So out of that, a lot of conversation about should it go back down to, or should it go down to 3 games on that day? Is 4 games too many? We did see on the coverage some of the empty seats for the Sharks-Panthers game, which is not a good look, as anybody knows. You want to see a full stadium, but there was 45,000 there at the stadium, and I believe it was a unbelievable atmosphere there. The English fans certainly know how to create an atmosphere, that is for sure. We keep on hearing that from, or I keep on hearing that from the ex-players that have played over in England, and they talk about the crowds there. They are certainly very different to the ones here in Australia. So should Las Vegas go down to 3 games? Well, look, I think Peter V'landys is thinking about that one. Look, unfortunately, a lot of people are thinking maybe the women's game gets taken away from that schedule. I think there is a lot of for the English Super League sides to come over to Las Vegas, or go over to Las Vegas and play. So potentially that one will stay. There was also talk the other day about maybe do you have one NRL game? Do you have the World Club Challenge played there as well? And do you have one Super League game played there? So you'd have 3 NRL sides, 3 Super League sides over there, and the World Club Challenge played probably in the middle of the Super League game and the NRL game, just to see who the best in the world is. There was, of course, this year there was no World Club Challenge played between Wigan and the Panthers. So what's your thoughts about that one? Look at it. I am a big follower of the women's game. I love watching it. Always catch it State of Origin time, and the NRLW, obviously, with Parramatta having a team in there, and catch the internationals as well. But it would be a shame to see that game removed off the schedule there. Could you have 4 games and maybe move that game in the schedule? Is it a timing thing? I think it probably was, that the Super League game was on first, and then an NRL game, and then the Women's International. But could you maybe move the Women's International to after the Super League game and still have the 2 NRL games? Look, I don't know. I don't know what is a perfect scenario, but crowds were bigger this year than last year, and I think the NRL are hoping for a even bigger crowd next year. So, look, it's an interesting conundrum to come up with, being the bosses at the NRL. What do you do for Las Vegas 2026? We all saw that there was, I think, 9,000 English come over for the game, 7,000 or so New Zealanders come over for the game because the New Zealand Warriors were playing. 17 odd thousand, I think it was, Australians go over there for the game. Obviously, most of your fans are going to be Australian, but having those English sides play over in Las Vegas obviously brings those crowds over there as well. There was reports that the weekend, the week, and especially the weekend of the Las Vegas games brought in about $100 million in tourism dollars to the Las Vegas capital, or the Las Vegas city. So that is a lot of money. So yeah, you probably don't want to drop any of the English sides over there, and yeah, unfortunately, it does look like it might be the women's game that does suffer in that one. It's a hard one because the women's teams, they're in probably, or they are in off season, and it just shows you how different the competition is in Australia compared to England. I think New Zealand, a lot of people were saying, why didn't the Gillaroos play the Kiwi Ferns? They also, I think, beat England recently. So, yeah, it's a tough one. But let me know what you think. Should it go 3 games, 2 games, 4 games? There was also talk about potentially playing a NRL game or a couple of NRL games in England at Wembley Stadium, and that was probably to prop up the English game over there, because apparently it is struggling over there in England. Would that get the crowds into the games? Would that give that game a boost over there? Who knows? But look, I don't know about playing an NRL game over in England. I think they just have to stick with the American market. The game is already obviously well established in England at the moment, although it is suffering a little bit. But I don't think you could take any NRL games over to England. Look, Donald Trump didn't turn up to the NRL in Vegas, but apparently one thing that did come out of it that has probably helped boost the NRL is the fact that Katy Perry, the well-known singer, and has 204 million followers on Instagram, by the way, caught up with the Cronulla Sharks. A couple of the Cronulla Sharks players, Kyle Iro and Nico Hines. She got a signed Cronulla Sharks jersey, and she has now deemed herself to be a Cronulla Sharks fan. So, look, she represents the Sharks now. She reps the Sharks now, apparently. So, look, that is a massive boost for the game in America, you could say. After being presented with a Sharks jersey, it was, and I guess they're going to catch up on when she tours Australia soon as well. But yeah, her mentioning the Sharks, that is a big deal, I think, anyway. It was on the morning mashup breakfast radio show that is the number 1 breakfast radio show in the United States. So it is streamed to a monthly audience of 150 million listeners. So look, fans of Katy Perry would have been listening to that for sure. Katy Perry has 384 million followers on social media, so wow, that's astounding. So no doubt the Cronulla Sharks got some great exposure there for the cost of an NRL jersey and a few signatures and a meet-up in Las Vegas with Katy Perry. So obviously got some great exposure there, not only for the Cronulla Sharks but for the game of rugby league as well. So great stuff there. Let's hope maybe she might even come to a couple of NRL games when she's out here in Australia on her tour. Look, a little bit of talk about the teams that were going to Las Vegas in 2026. Now, there has been talk about the Dragons and the Bulldogs playing a rivalry game over there. There has also been talk about the Newcastle Knights wanting to go over to Las Vegas. There has been also talk about the Titans and the Cowboys, the Queensland side, going over there as well, which will be interesting to see what happens. My club, the Parramatta Eels, they have expressed interest in going to Las Vegas, apparently. Whether that will be 2026 or beyond that, I don't know. So, look, I think an answer from the NRL will be coming, I guess, mid-season-ish, even before that. So I guess fans can start saving their pennies and try and get over there and support their team. So they're the couple of the teams that have been mentioned there. Personally, I don't think you can take a Dragons Bulldogs game over there. I just think, as it is a rivalry game, I think you're robbing a lot of fans from Australia and especially New South Wales that could go to that game. I know that because it is a rivalry game, get that out in the American field, with the American viewers watching it, just seeing how intense that game could be. That would be a good thing, but I just don't think that would be a good thing for the fans going forward. So we'll just have to wait and see, but they are some of the teams that have been mentioned. When I mentioned about TV anyway, there was about more than 2.7 million viewers in the United States and Australia and New Zealand that tuned in to the opening two games of the NRL season, and has set broadcasting records across the game. So, look, the biggest thing that I can see here is the Fox network over in America. The Raiders-Warriors match attracted an average of a US audience of 371,000, with streaming on Watch NRL taking the total number of viewers to 400,000. That is amazing. We all know that it was on the free-to-air Fox network over there in the US this time around. In comparison, last year's Sea Eagles Rabbitohs match drew an audience of 61,000 in the United States. So, look, amazing figures there. Last weekend's two NRL matches were viewed by audiences of more than 2 million in Australia, which is probably pretty obvious. More than 400,000 in the United States. Now, I know that is only a small figure in a massive country like America, but still, that is eyeballs on rugby league, which is what the NRL wanted. More than 300,000 in New Zealand. So, look, a pretty good figures there for, I guess you could say, Fox Sports and also the NRL, which shows you that the game is gaining traction over in America. There have been a few fans that were interviewed over there, players of Gridiron, that said that they would give NRL Rugby League a crack. One of the things that came out of it for me was hearing Aaron Woods, who had been over there for, I think, a week before the games kicked off on Sunday, saying that one of the biggest differences he noticed this year around, was the fact that last year over in America, Americans were calling it rugby, and apparently this year they were calling it rugby league. So that is a massive difference, having that rugby league name said rather than just rugby. So Americans are getting into it slowly, and look, it's going to take time. It is a 5-year deal. Who knows whether it will go longer than 5 years, but we'll just have to wait and see. But it is slowly gaining more and more traction, that is for sure. And who knows, in terms of crowd figures for next season, maybe there might be 50,000 there, or at Allegiant Stadium, or 55,000, who knows. Maybe by the end of the contract cycle, it might even be a complete sellout at Allegiant Stadium. You just don't know. I guess you've got to take the right teams along that will gain those ticket sales and get those viewers on the game to get a sellout. But look, as I said, it was probably a pretty successful weekend for the NRL. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed watching it. The calibre of football was probably not the best. Probably the Sharks-Panthers game was probably the most interesting one there. As I said, we all like to see tries, and we certainly did see that in the Gillaroos game, and that just shows you how professional they are. But we like to also see some close contests. Look, it is only the first week of the competition. The Super League had been playing for a few weeks now, so it was the first week of the competition, but we'll just have to wait and see what happens from there. And we'll just have to wait and see what happens to those teams that travelled to Vegas this year, how they will travel again this year. I think last season, the winners of the two games there, the Roosters and the Manly Sea Eagles, they made the finals. However, the losers of those games, the Brisbane Broncos and the South Sydney Rabbitohs, had a season they would rather forget. So it'll be interesting to see what happens this season. The Sharks, they're pretty much one of the highly fancied teams in this competition this season. So it'll be interesting to see what happens to them. And I think the Warriors, they have to play over in or play up in Townsville, I think, next week, not this week. Those four teams are having the week off, but I think the week after they are playing up in North Queensland, so a lot of travel for them, that is for sure. No, sorry, they are playing at home. I think it may have been the Canberra Raiders. Let's have a look. No, they're playing at home as well. There was one side. I'm just looking it up at the moment as we speak. It is the Cronulla Sharks. That's right, the Cronulla Sharks. There we go. I got there in the end. Sorry about the delay there. So a lot of travel early on for them over to Las Vegas. Obviously, they've got this week off. The players are home now. All the commentators are back now as well. But then next Saturday, not this Saturday coming, but the 15th of March, a travel trip to Queensland, to Townsville. So another long flight for them. So a lot of early on travel in those first 2 weeks, call it 3 weeks of the competition for the Sharks. So I wonder how they will go with that, but just have to wait and see. Look, I hope you enjoyed my NRL Vegas round 1 Troy's take, I guess you could say. And as I said at the start, I'm hoping to potentially do like a NRL round review each week, maybe even each fortnight, and that will encompass also any breaking news or news in the NRL as well, because as I said, I love to talk about footy. So stay tuned for those shows. Stay tuned on all the social media channels to see when those ones are coming up as well. But thank you very much for listening. Please don't forget to give the podcast a follow on Instagram, Facebook, and also Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast from. I'd really, really appreciate that one. Look, enjoy your footy over the weekend, and I hope your team wins. Look, I hope Parramatta wins as well and gets their season off to a great start. Going to be a tough one without any Mitchell Moses. But I hope you enjoy your footy over the weekend. And the Para Cave podcast, by the fan, for the fans. Go Para!
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Paracave Podcast. See you next time.